about an interview I did with Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi yesterday on CNN. Now, as a rule, I think it's important that reporters not become part of the story. I don't get into feuds with other cable news anchors or professional politicians. On this broadcast, and especially in this awful tragedy, we try to keep the focus on where it should be, on the victims and the survivors and the loved ones they left behind. But today, the Attorney General went on a radio show and made some claims about our interview that are just factually incorrect. Now, she's either mistaken or she's not telling the truth. Talking about my interview with her yesterday, here's part of what she said on WOR, New York talk radio station, today.
So we've been dealing with price gouging issues, with potential scams about people trying to donate to legitimate charities. So that's what they told us they wanted us to talk about. And we felt like Anderson Cooper had a huge audience to help people yesterday. So we went over there, we went on, we were going to talk about, the interview was supposed to be about helping victims' families, not creating more anger and havoc and hatred yesterday. Yesterday was about unity, about bringing people together, about helping these people. Before we went live, I said, Anderson, these are all the issues we need to help people with. And he said, okay, that's great. We started off with just maybe a couple minutes, if that, about the scams, the potential scams that people all over the world want to donate. And just they need to make sure these websites are legitimate.
Now, Attorney General Bondi is correct when she says we spoke just before we went on the air live. As I do with most guests, I ask them as a courtesy what they want to talk about. So I asked her what she wanted to talk about. She mentioned possible scams that arise in the wake of tragedies, shady funeral homes she mentioned, and GoFundMe pages that her office were trying to verify as legit. Now, that's important, I said to her. Great, let's talk about it. In fact, I said, let's start with that. Let's lead off the interview with that. That's what I'll start with. She warned me she had no actual specifics about any scams, but I still said we would discuss it, and that's exactly what we did. So that's the only reason that whole topic ever came up in our discussion. But it's not true for her to say that she was booked to talk about scams in the first place. Now, you might ask, how do I know this? I know this because here are the pre-interview notes compiled by a CNN producer based on what Bondi's own office said she could possibly discuss. And nowhere in these notes were scams mentioned. In fact, right here, her office says that she could talk about the investigation process, but she couldn't get into any specifics beyond what the FBI had already said. She could say it was critical for law enforcement to be allowed to do their job properly and to avoid missteps. She also said that she could talk about the fact that she's meeting with victims' families and trying to help them, but that she also said she would not talk about gun control or any issues surrounding gun control. So that's all in the notes. So instead of following what her office suggested, I chose to ask her about comments she herself publicly has made on numerous other television show appearances in just the last few days. She's been on a lot of TV. Comments which seemed contradictory to her record in dealing with gays and lesbians in this state. So now another of the Attorney General's complaints, how CNN presented the interview. Listen.
When he posted the clip, he cut out the entire first portion that discussed people donating to legitimate sites.
Now, again, for the record, the interview aired live and unedited in the 2 p.m. Eastern hour yesterday on CNN. Everyone watching across the country and watching around the world saw and heard Pam Bondi say exactly what she said in real time, just as she said it. She's apparently there referring to a clip that was posted shortly after online over at CNN.com, a clip which focused just on our discussion about her public statements and her past record. Now, I don't control what's posted online. I'm here on the ground, and I'm told they routinely shorten interviews online for time. Frankly, I wish they had posted the whole thing immediately, which they did, by the way, later in the day yesterday, and it's now online for you to watch in its entirety, including the vague comments about possible scams and making sure you donate to a reputable organization, all of which are important. But let's be real here. Ms. Bondi's big complaint seems to be that I asked in the first place, in the wake of a massacre that targeted gay and lesbian citizens, about her new statements about the gay community and about her old ones.
I was extremely disappointed in that. And it just wasn't the time nor the place for that yesterday, because all it did was encourage anger and hate and families who were trying to help to probably not trust my office and the 14 advocates we've brought in who are trying to help them get compensation to bury their loved ones. And of course, I've been getting, horrible hatred emails and texts now based on Anderson's story. So that was just sad because he had a real opportunity to bring our country together yesterday and talk about what's right and what's good instead of a story filled with anger.
A story filled with anger. So, for the record, my interview was not filled with any anger. I was respectful before the interview, I was respectful during the interview, and I was respectful after the interview. I don't know Pam Bondi personally. She seems like a nice person, actually. I don't think she has hate in her heart. But what I think doesn't matter. It's my job to hold people accountable. And if on Sunday a politician is talking about love and embracing, quote, our LGBT community, I don't think it's unfair to look at their record and see if they have actually ever spoken that way publicly before, which I've never heard her say. The fact is, Attorney General Bondi signed off on a 2014 federal court brief that claimed married gay people would, quote, impose significant public harm. Harm. She spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayer money, gay and straight taxpayers' money, trying to keep gays and lesbians from getting the right to marry. Now, look, good people can and do disagree on that issue. Everyone has a right to their own opinion, thank goodness. But Ms. Bondi is championing right now her efforts to help survivors, but the very right which allows gay spouses to bury their dead loved ones, that's a right that would not exist if Ms. Bondi had had her way. I think it's fair to ask her about that. There is an irony in that. I don't believe anyone should send angry, mean messages to her or anyone else, but that isn't what I've seen here these last few days. What I have seen here among gays and lesbians here, it's not hate and it's not anger. I've seen love and I've seen unity. Now, as I mentioned, one of Ms. Bondi's issues was the fact that when the interview first was posted on CNN.com for a couple hours, part of the bit about the charity scams was cut out. She wanted the whole interview seen, so it was reposted in its entirety yesterday, and it's still on there right now.